Welcome to Design to Game. There are three main sections to navigate. Workshops contains all the links to the workshops done this semester. Research contains all links and posts to the development of the game, and the games design document contains the information for the game itself. Continue listening if you want to find out more. If not, you can explore these sections yourself. So all the links I'm going to talk about can be found under the tag top posts. Started this project by looking at 7 short stories. I chose Metamorphosis due to the juxtaposition between the mundane life of Gregor and the supernatural element of being turned into an insect. This sparked real interest after reading it in Kafka himself, who wrote it, and who he was, where he'd come from. So after doing a quick search, it was written during a really volatile time in Prague, just after the start of the Second World War, and Prague had recently become independent, or would be independent. So, having always wanted to go to Prague, I took a trip there to see what the city itself was like. It had very elaborate, large buildings and also a museum for Kafka. So heading right there, I learnt more about who Kafka was, what he was interested in, and how he felt about the city. He talked a lot about the invisible boundaries between being Jewish and part of a ghetto around that time, and the social and political pressures, and how he felt trapped. So he wanted to be creative but was stuck in a day job as a lawyer. So after arriving home from Prague, I took some of these themes, such as how everything in Prague seemed exaggerated, and also around the time Kafka wrote the book, Expressionism was being born, which really kind of captured the mood of Prague and how Kafka would have seen it, particularly with the industrialization of cities and the way that modern life was just speeding up. So I took some of the imagery of Prague and did it in the style of an expressionist kind of painting, making everything more exaggerated and taller and just a little bit off-key. I then looked at high-rise buildings because the images I created up, and that's what high-rise and skyscrapers are. They're exaggerated buildings. So I enjoyed doing some research about what they look like and kind of the structure and the imagery, and also the kind of feeling they gave, that when you're stood below one, they just kind of feel like you're being swallowed and they're very intimidating. I then looked at the invisible lines and like the social boundaries and the pressures, and used the lotus blossom technique to kind of take the word and then spread it out as far as I could using imagery to kind of like start this. I then started to think of ideas and how to like make something new from all of the data I'd collected. So I used a word cloud using all of the lotus blossom words to see what path I wanted to take it. I then took these words and put them together in order to create something new. My favourite one was the Grey Tribe, which I then used throughout the rest of my work as like the core inspiration for it. Starting with the Grey Tribe, I looked through Vogue and all the grey outfits, just quickly getting into what the Grey Tribe could be. I then spent a lot of time thinking up more ideas of what the Grey Tribe could do, what the mechanics of the game could be, and how to really develop the idea further. One of the other images I liked was commuters and how they're kind of an autonomous grey tribe, but actually finding the commute blog, it takes individuals from that crowd and really makes something unique and interesting. So combining these two ideas of like commuters and the Vogue images, I created this futuristic imagery of what the Grey Tribe could be. Another influence was the Dulux adverts, where it talks about colour being banned and everyone lives in this grey world until they kind of explore something new and all the colour turns something new. So I started to think more about the gameplay itself, and we'd recently done a project on interactive fiction and narratives. And so I wanted to explore more how you could write different structures and what choose your own adventure or interactive narrative was like. So I started combining this with the Grey Tribe as a non-linear story and playing with different narratives and people and characters and how to really write something which the user can make their own narrative from. I then pitched this idea to my tutor as Greyton. It was an interactive narrative on the iPad and aimed at kind of 25 to 40-year-old females as my target audience. And they're 4 stories which influence each other as they go out of their comfort zones, bringing colour back to Greyton. Picked this game genre as it's one of the most popular ones. And then I looked at the top games for the iPad, because you can do some really creative games on it and easily accessible. So I looked at what was already out there, and Device 6 and Year Walk were some really interesting ones. Year Walk in particular had some great gameplay and mechanics I thought I might use. Another game which really influenced me was Air Pressure. As the interactive narrative, you have to play several times in order to get the full picture. I looked a little bit more into the development of Year Walk and the way they sketched out an interactive narrative, or the way you could move through the world, because I really liked the movement in their iPad game. It was very intuitive. I then started to plan out what the narrative would be, trying lots of different stories and characters and like sketching ideas of how it could work on an iPad. I then went back to the imagery of the Vogue commuters and started creating this world with a specific rhythm and routine. So these characters would be robots set in the near future working for a tech company. And this is just how you'd go about writing the structure for this. I then used Twine to help write the structure, because I wanted to interlink all the stories and see how I could write it. And then filled in the backstory from there, as Maximo is the corporation which they're all working for, and you play as these robots or clones who break out of their routine and influence each other's decisions. I then expand on the company and find some imagery and set it on a real-life city to make it feel like it could be real, it could be set in the near future. So for more information on Little Greyton, the game which I've developed and designed, go to the games design document and find out some more.